It's going to be sickening to me that the one time an actual Long Island-born player was a fan of the Islanders instead of the Rangers, not to mention a high-end one, might end up on the Philadelphia Flyers. I mean, that's just awful.
And here it comes.
Draw. The fourth ball is number 13.
Holy shnikes.
Holy shit. I think the Islanders won the draft lottery. That because the New York Islanders won the draft lottery. I don't know if I'm like many people that watch. I didn't know what the hell was going on.
Yeah, that's what this comment was. Was anybody else confused with the actual drawing process?
Yeah, James, I think it was definitely transparent. This is the way they really do it. You always hear about the behind the scenes that goes on with all this, but this is actually the way that they do it. And the guys were asking me, they're like, what's going on? I'm like, I think the Islanders just got the first overall pick. So, I mean, it's amazing. It's the second time the Islanders have won the lottery in their history, Anthony. And, of course, the last time was John Tavares. It'll be the third time they picked number 1 overall. They traded up to get Rick DiPietro. Yep. The question is, and I'll direct this right to you. And by the way, Anthony, good thing we haven't done the Islanders wrap-up show yet. Everybody, make sure you stay tuned to that because we got a lot of Islanders news that are coming in. Anthony, you're the GM of the New York Islanders. You yourself was saying you wanted to be able to draft James Hagens. What would you do, or what should the Islanders do with this pick?
So this is a lot of controversy amongst Islander fans. Most want them to select Misa or Schaefer with the first pick, and then there are some that still own James Hagens. But yes, Hagens was the consensus pick from, let's say, last June to maybe about December. And then because of, Misa's year, and then Schaefer maybe impressing, even though they only played 17 games, he got bumped down to number 3. So
sounds to me like someone's got a case of the Sposdas.
Now the question is, do the Islanders draft a guy who is a huge Islander fan, right? He just said it after the lottery. Andrew Gross had this story, if you look at his Twitter, but he talked about how, he loved the Islanders growing up. He would love to be able to come home and, he wants to be an Islander. So it's like, do you still take him at number 1 or do you go with, I guess, what you could say the consensus in Schaefer, although there were some advocating for Misa. So it's a tough choice. I see there are some fans that are concerned with, I think it was the night of the lottery, Matthew Schaefer did a video and, they're asking about his upbringing and he brought up how he loved the Leafs and, some Islander fans automatically got PTSD and they were saying, oh, well, we have one guy here in Hagens that is basically begging to play for your franchise. And then you have another guy from the greater Toronto area that was a Leafs fan. So it's like, take the Islander fan, but
it's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
That's just fan speak. Obviously the ownership group, no GM in place yet, but they'll go through their interview process. They'll interview Misa, they'll interview Schaefer, they'll interview Hagens. And whatever young man, which one of those young men impresses the most, maybe they end up being the first overall pick. But, my heart is split on it. We all talked about James Hagens really since the end of last year's draft about how good he is and we wish we would have him on our team and now here we are and the Islanders can actually make it possible. Long Island born and raised, so I get that part, but do you just draft Schaefer? I mean, they say that Schaefer skates Cale Makar-esque, maybe not to the same level but pretty close, so that's hard to pass up on. He did break his clavicle. Some people are worried about an injury because of that, but clavicle is not a long-term injury thing. It's not like a torn knee. So I'm not really worried about him only playing 17 games because of the injury. So for me, that's not an issue. And then you have Misa at 134 points. So it's like, yet he didn't make Canada's World Junior team. You know why? So there are so many different elements to this year that I honestly I don't know where it's going to go. My gut right now tells me that I think they're going to go with Schaefer just because he's 17 years old. He's actually close to being eligible for the 2026 draft, and he's already 6'1", 180 pounds. So it's like, the guy may end up being a beast. So it's like, so I don't know. I think they go with Schaefer, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did go Hagens. And before I hand it off to you guys, the one element that people are talking about, which I think Range Central's saying that I referenced, is that there's the possibility that if the Islanders interview Hagens and they really fall in love with him and they say this kid has a good head on his shoulders, he wants to play for our team, maybe they draft Schaefer and try to get that 4th pick from Utah, because there's some talk about how Utah, they want to win now. They might want an established player who can step in and play right away. And that's where Noah Dobson's name comes into it. Would Utah take Noah Dobson in Colorado's 2026 first for that 4th pick? I don't know, but it's not totally impossible. And if that did play to fruition, I think Islander fans would their heads would explode.
Mind blown.
Because that would be a dream scenario, right? Schaefer and Hagens to go along with Richie, Yzerman, Nelson. The team would be transformed overnight. So
drafts are complicated because it's all about boards. It's all about each team's individual boards. Like you see it in football all the time. Teams trade up for quarterbacks, positional needs, so on. It's all about who you identify as the guy that you want, and your scouting staff has to come to a consensus on it. I think James Hagens would be a great story. I wonder about his skill in relation to Misa and, Schaefer. I think Schaefer might be the best player in this draft. I just think when you have a guy that's 6'2", 185 pounds, he's barely 17, comes along and he could skate almost like Cale Makar. I think you're looking at a franchise-type defenseman. I really do. James Hagens, I think, will be a first-line center in this league. I wonder about his goal scoring. I think he has a good shot. I don't think it's a great shot. It's not. He reminds me of a lesser version of Jack Hughes. A lesser in the fact that he's not as good as a skater. Still a very good skater, but Jack Hughes is a phenomenal skater. Let's face facts. So that's something to keep an eye out on with Hagens. If the Islanders fall in love with Hagens, what they should try to do is they should try to trade down. They shouldn't take him at 1. It's not good value at 1 right now. Honestly, the best pick for me would be Matthew Schaefer. I wouldn't even overthink it. I would just do it. Even with Noah Dobson, even if you keep Noah Dobson, what's the bad part about having 2 cornerstone defensemen in your top 4?
Mm-hmm.
Teams build around defense. You win with defensive depth. And that's where the Islanders have lacked depth over the last, let's just say, 5 seasons. Because guys like Adam Pelech keep getting hurt. Ryan Pulock banged up. Noah Dobson developing defensively, but he looks to be the part of a very good point producer. So getting Schaefer there would help them big time. But at the same time, I don't think they've had a center like Michael Misa in a very long time. I think the last center that they've had that reminds me of someone like Misa would probably be Pat LaFontaine. And I'm not saying Misa's going to be like LaFontaine. I think Misa's skating is good, not great. I think he could use some work there. But the guy is a Swiss Army knife, and you win with guys like that. Do you think that San Jose is not salivating at the idea of putting him behind Macklin Celebrini and having a 1-2 punch of potential Selke candidates each year? They're foaming at the mouth at it right now. Absolutely foaming. So for me, I think you got to take one of those 2 guys. Or if you really do fall in love with Hagens, and that's fine. I understand it. If you fall in love with Hagens, you better trade down. because you take him at 1 and you leave Schaefer or Misa there on that board for another team to take. You're literally gift wrapping a potential franchise type player to another team, and you're not getting anything for it. And that would be gross mismanagement.
If San Jose desperately wants Schaefer, could the Islanders trade with flip-flop with San Jose, swap, and get Dallas's, because San Jose owns Dallas's first-round pick. Granted, it's going to be a late-round pick, but you might be able to pick up Dallas's first-round pick to make that trade down if San Jose desperately wants Schaefer that badly.
And you know what, Anthony? They could potentially do it twice. Because
yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Mark. You're onto something here. If they want to trade down and then trade down again to where Hagens would land in like maybe the 4-5 range, and they can acquire more picks, you can really turn your team around quickly with that type of result.
Brilliant! Promote that man.
Let me just say this first for the narrative. If everybody's worried about him pulling a Tavares and just saying, take the Long Island kid because he's never going to want to leave, who knows? I mean, the organization could alienate him and then he could want to leave anyway and go somewhere else. Don't just take him because you think, oh no, we want this guy around for years. You want him to take him because he's the player that you want to identify and put at the top of your board. If they can trade down, and as I just alluded to, you trade down with swap with San Jose so they can get Schaefer, maybe swap with Chicago so they can get Misa, and then you could potentially take maybe 2 more first-round picks, maybe a third, maybe something like that, and really restock the cupboard and get the Islanders back. And then you're talking about a lot of young talent there.
Now, would that be something you might be interested in?
Definitely.
I would say don't fall in love with the storyline, except now this is the time for you can start falling in love with the storyline. Because the only thing I can think about in comparison to this is almost like the 1980 draft where Dennis Savard went 3rd. The number 1 overall pick was the Montreal Canadiens. They drafted Doug Wickenheiser instead of taking the hometown boy, Denny Savard.
I talked about I highlighted Jay's comment because you can't win a lottery, but San Jose, if they wanted to trade into the 1st overall pick, they could trade into that. And if the Islanders, like I said, if they fall in love with Hagens and they want to move down, I mean, if the new GM can get a little creative and get there, that could help restock that cupboard quicker than expected.
This is why a veteran GM might not be the best one to go with. Get the younger guy that'll think outside the box, and he'll identify Hagens, go down a little bit more. He could potentially go down, I think, as low as 4, and still his stockpile several draft picks. And, then the Islanders are looking like an exciting organization, not just I think actually the Islanders have a better future right now than New York Rangers, but that's a different story at the moment. But this is something, if they can get Hagens, we were talking about this all along, if they could possibly get up to get Hagens. Well, now they can. It's almost like they went too far. If they could have stopped it at 4 and not gone all the way to 1, but instead, now you're at 1, now you have a bigger decision and you want to trade back. If you're going to take one of those other 2 guys and not take Hagens, you'd better damn well be sure.
Your ideas are intriguing to me, and I wish to subscribe to your newsletter.